Morning, Senator.
Good morning. Hope you can hear me.
We can.
Great. Scott, thank you very much for bringing us together in response to my request, and thanks to Dan Miser and John Jennings, Philip Barnett, Tim Adams, all of you for your leadership, and others who are on this call. I see many of you whom I have visited already, and we are at a critical point, and I really wanted to give you an update and also hear your comments and reactions to some of what is going on here. So I'll let you run the meeting, and if you have any introductory remarks, I'm all ears. Otherwise, I can kind of give you a rundown on where we are here.
Sure, Senator. Thank you so much, as always, for your leadership. Just so everyone knows, over the last 8 months, I think the Senator and I have probably been to well over 15 or 20 restaurants together, and how this pandemic has played out and being a voice for our industry. So I just want to start there, Senator. I know we'll get into the kind of the details of where we are down in DC, and you can kind of give some updates. I have some questions. I know there's definitely some folks on that probably have a little more detailed questions, but I want to start specifically because I know we haven't talked in a few weeks, just to share with you what is going on in Connecticut. And I shared this with the governor earlier in the week, and obviously I talk to Commissioner Lehman every single day, and I'm gonna have a call with him after this. But I just will be blunt. This is the most difficult time our industry right now has faced since this pandemic started, and it's extremely scary for all of the people on the call, for all the people that aren't able to make the call today, and the reason being is they don't know what tomorrow brings for their industry. Every single minute, almost now, I'm getting calls from restaurants right now that are making a really difficult decision to close their doors, and the impact that the future right now of where they are in Connecticut. I think last week alone was the toughest week in this industry that they've faced revenue-wise. It's not getting any better. I think the faucet of consumer confidence, whether you want to lean on the governor's remarks, DPH, CDC, national stories, whatever that can be. I think everything pulled together has really made this difficult. But I've been out and went to a restaurant every single day the last probably 10 days, and I see it. I see the fact that whether just people aren't coming out to support them like they should, and these restaurants are unfortunately making decisions to close their doors. I know they're saying maybe till spring. As I shared with the commissioner yesterday, there's no guarantee they're going to reopen. There's no guarantee, but the other piece to this is the employees that are being affected by this. We're looking into the holidays here in December, and people are being let go with really no safety net on a state side. The state unemployment has been announced that it's insolvent, and then obviously the federal unemployment piece, and at no fault of their own of anybody on this call, Senator, that what they've gone through. But I think this is a really, actually thank you and your team for putting this call together, because this is a really important time for the future of where we are as an industry and where we go from here. And there's a couple of asks specifically I have of you today. I think a lot of people do as well. But I really, need, I know there's some media listening in and everything else, for people to understand this isn't just one or two restaurants. This is an entire industry in our state that is on the verge of collapse. I said that in a letter to the governor on Monday. I'm not going to hide behind that. And I worry about the future. I think everyone needs to step up and do their part in helping our industry. And not only what you're trying to do down in DC is extremely important. Another federal stimulus needs to happen now. But also our state can step up, and they should step up. And I said that to Commissioner Lehman and to the governor directly, that there's an opportunity for them, like other states, to help make us get through this together. With CARES Act funding that you helped pass, Senator, there's dollars still left on the table that we have until the end of the year for them to allocate those funds. And I'm not here to say other industries aren't hurting, But at the end of the day, I think it's important that I share that stark kind of update with you, Senator, because I know you probably talked to some. But as I've been shared with numbers, as I've seen the reservations, as I've seen these empty restaurants across our state, with really no glimmer of hope over the next few months. We've already mentioned over 600 restaurants have closed their doors. That was before outdoor dining really was shuttered pretty much completely now. The real number that's out there is potentially thousands of restaurants. So making sure that we do everything that we can to help. And people are saying I'm frozen. So can you hear me, Senator? I apologize if I'm freezing or not.
I can hear you. What's important is your voice, and you have made your case very dramatically and powerfully. So please continue.
Yeah. So listen, I know there's a lot we could talk about today, but I need to be clear that people listening in know from a CRA standpoint that we have to do something, not only on the federal side, but on the state side right now. If we do not, I'm in fear of where we go from here with our industry, where we end up. The last piece that I'll mention is, and I shared this with the governor's team on Monday, is, my goal right now is to help all these businesses listening in, all these businesses that are here, make it to the other side of this pandemic. We know we're going to get through it. I want to talk about the optimism of a vaccine, how it gets distributed, how we get back to a phase 3, hopefully, and then beyond. But more importantly, it's the next 2 or 3 months, the more businesses that close their doors, my fear is they're not going to get a chance to see that recovery. They're not going to get a chance to see the spring and summer of expanded outdoor dining, and people want to, are itching to get back in restaurants, even though they might be cautious right now. But how do we do everything in our power financially to help them get through these next 2 to 3 months? And yes, I know we're going to talk about a federal side, Senator, and we'll go into kind of a little bit of detail. But my ask of you today, especially, is if you don't mind. I know you have a relationship with the governor and with the commissioner and others. But, and I said that to Senator Murphy's team this morning, like a phone call to know that there's $196 million is what I was told by the Connecticut Examiner in a story on Monday of still unallocated funds in the CARES Act that they have to spend by December 31st. You help pass those dollars. Those aren't state funds. Those are CARES Act dollars. Yes, some of it's going to be earmarked for, testing and other things that it needs to go to. But looking at a plan, and I'll share with you too, Senator, Washington, D.C., the city, the mayor put out a $35 million program, a grant-based program for restaurants. Maryland has a $50 million program. Ohio, a $38 million program. New Jersey, $35 million. Rhode Island just announced another $50 million that they're adding to a grant-based program using these funds. And that would be an ask that I have of you right now, kind of to start to making sure what we do with those funds. And I know the governor's even brought up the rainy day fund, which I think has like $3.6 billion left in it. Any way that we can get some things on the state side, not only on the federal, but the state can do some things. So I start there, Senator, and just see your reaction to that, and know if you've had any conversations on a state side, because I know we're going to talk federal, but I know you don't have a vote or push to make that happen, but you were a large part of getting those dollars to go to the state, the 2.8, the $1.38 billion that came to our state. But only, I want to say, I think 3.5% has actually been used on small businesses. And that's something, anything that you guys can help from your leadership to get us some response from the governor on how he's going to use those funds.
Thank you so much, Scott. The reason I reached out to you is because I have been seeing and hearing the hurt and desperation that you've just described all across the state of Connecticut. I have seen people hurting, businesses desperate, hanging by a thread, struggling to survive, small businesses like these restaurants, and no sector of our economy has been hit harder than our restaurants. They are small businesses that employ thousands of people. They serve millions across the state. and they are part of our economy's backbone. So I am fully committed to continue this fight, as I have been doing, for the kind of aid that needs to come from the federal government. And I can pledge to you that I will be in touch with the governor and his team today along the lines that your industry is suggesting, that we need to use more of the money already in state hands to provide some aid. Let me give you a rough overview of where we are here. We have been working on a potential package, a pandemic relief program for weeks. As you know, there have been differences on the amount of money and what it should do. Without being overly harsh or partisan, in my view, the major obstacle has been the majority leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell. Right now, as we speak, a group of my Republican colleagues is at the White House seeking the president's support for a $908 billion package. It's a compromise. It's well below the House $3.4 trillion Act. It's well below the $2.2 trillion, which was Speaker Pelosi's proposed compromise. It's well below what the administration was offering through Secretary Mnuchin. That's about $1.8 trillion. $908 billion for 4 months is well below what I would like to see. I am willing to support it as a positive first step because we need desperately and dramatically an immediate relief package that would extend the PPP program, Paycheck Protection Program. Many of you have already received one installment. This program would combine the two measures. Many of you are familiar with it, the Restaurants Act and the Restart Act, both of them seeking to extend and enlarge PPP, providing loans that will be, number one, more easily converted into grants without some of the bureaucratic obstacles. It will provide a need criteria, that is a revenue loss measure of whether businesses really need the money, so that those hardest hit will be the first in line and the biggest recipients. And it will enable use of this money, not only for payroll, but for the kind of improvements to your premises, for supplies, for other essential elements of your business. So it is meant to be both more flexible and more targeted. And under the $908 billion program, at least $288 billion would go for this small business program that would not only meet the needs of restaurants, but other small businesses, including our stages. The Save Our Stages Act would be combined into this bill, and also the events industry. I know many of you work with the events industry. That measure would be covered as well. I've been a champion of Save Our Stages, Restart Act, the Restaurants Act, and a number of these other measures. Again, I just want to emphasize, it's far from perfect, very far from perfect. But we should not leave the Capitol without having done something before the holidays. The Congress of the United States should not be sent home by Mitch McConnell without acting on another relief package. And what I can tell you is that I have been engaged in talks with my colleagues as recently as less than an hour ago with a number of fairly senior members, Republican colleagues, who are backing this proposed compromise. And I really hope that Senator McConnell will heed voices within his own caucus, as well as voices out there among the American people. He knows all of America's hurting, just like Connecticut is struggling. And unfortunately and tragically, we face a very dark time ahead. You've described it very graphically. as it applies to the restaurant industry, but there are so many other sectors of our economy that are hurting as well. And we know we need to conquer this pandemic, make people feel safe and secure so that they will go back to restaurants, as well as the malls and schools and other places where people come together. We've been pushing money, and this COVID emergency relief framework contains it for more vaccine development and distribution. We need to get it out to people and make sure that they understand and trust that it's safe and effective. So education and communication are critical. We need more aid for state and local government. This package contains it as well. So we have the teachers and police, fire, first responders, doctors, nurses. There is also unemployment insurance in this package so that the folks who are unemployed can go to your restaurants. If they don't have money to pay their rent or buy essentials, clothe their children, they're not going to come back to your restaurants. They can't afford it. So it has to be a comprehensive measure, which is the aim of this COVID emergency relief framework, the $908 billion framework that we are working with. If we have the opportunity, we will expand it. I've talked to many of you individually. I know many of your stories. They break my heart. I know you've poured your souls and hearts and families into your restaurant, and they are wonderful places to go, not just to eat, but to come together. I was at one just this past weekend. I've been going around, by the way, Scott, it's not only the 15 that you and I have visited, but I was in at a business in Black Rock, in Fairfield, Bridgeport, the Black Rhino, which has just opened in the midst of a pandemic. And I've been around literally every weekend that I come back to Connecticut, and I do come back every weekend. I drive back and forth. I haven't been in a train or a plane since the beginning of this whole pandemic. And I make a point of visiting restaurants just to know and hear the stories, and also to assure folks that I am fighting as hard as possible, and we will fight as long and hard as possible to make this kind of immediate relief possible. So that's roughly where we are. I'm being somewhat brief because we have a vote at 11:30. I can stay a little bit beyond 11:30, but I'm going to be going down to the floor, and I want to be able to tell my colleagues, my Republican colleagues, as well as my Democratic colleagues, about this call, about what I've seen and heard from you, because I think we are at a critical moment. And your voices and your faces mean so much. I really want to thank you for your advocacy, as well as your courage and your perseverance. It is amazing, and I know we must act now. We must meet this moment with prompt and effective relief for our restaurants, but also for our entire economy and the health needs of Connecticut.
Senator, just I know you do have to run. You're down there in DC on the floor, and for those who don't know, that it's always crazy time. So to be able to take this call means a lot, for you to just kind of give people a sense of what's really going on down there. Question I have, it's the Problem Solvers kind of caucus that put that $908 billion bill together, so people know. And I know there's some good things. There's some things we probably would like on our industry. But my question, I guess, for you, I know you talk more to your Senate leaders, but where, and I'm assuming Schumer, Senator Schumer is on board with trying to get something done. And that's really, I think, at the end of the day, I want to say, let's build a perfect bill. We don't have time for that. As you mentioned, we need to get something. You have December 10th, I believe, is when Congress's budget runs dry for you guys to extend even in this lame duck period. That's a date that's on the calendar that the National Restaurant Association is kind of leaning on. But I think you're exactly right. My message to your colleagues is you cannot leave, DC around the holidays, because what you're going to do is you're going to put thousands in Connecticut alone of restaurants out of business, employees out of business, out of jobs into the holidays. But one of my specific questions is, where is the House on this? What I know with the leader, with Leader Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi, and McConnell kind of being in there, you see it more down there. Is there, where is that on leadership side and Schumer? Like, are they actually getting in? I know you said they went to to the president today and Senate Republicans, but where have you talked with the speaker's kind of team and what she's willing to accept? Because I think obviously we know that in the state capitol side, but getting these leaders together to get this done in the House, so where would you say the House is right now?
Great question, Scott. I wish I had a definitive answer for you. I think the House is moving in this direction. I would be loath to speak for the House or the Speaker of the House, or even my Republican or Democratic colleagues there, or even the Connecticut delegation. But my sense is the House understands the urgency of our present predicament. And it is, I've seen those. I was on the day before Thanksgiving, I was out at Rentschler Field at the food bank out there. There were lines of cars. On the day after Thanksgiving, I was at the testing sites at the Newington VA hospital and down in Bridgeport at St. Vincent's. Lines of cars. We are in real time seeing and hearing, and my colleagues are too in the House, I believe, the urgency of now. And I'm optimistic that the House will go along with this kind of package as a next step, not the end game by any means, but as a next step.
And no, Senator, I appreciate the answer to that. I think the other question that I would lean on, I know you work on both sides of the aisle and inside the Senate. Senator McConnell's got it, and I haven't talked to my counterpart in the last week down in Kentucky, but so everyone knows they closed indoor dining in Kentucky, and we know thousands of people in our industry have gone on unemployment there, and he's got to feel that, and I hope he does, because looking at an industry in our state alone that has 160,000 employees, 8,500 restaurants. It's a similar model to Kentucky, but that I hope your messaging as you talk about both sides, the impact in New Mexico and Oregon and Michigan, Chicago, Philadelphia. Over the last 2 weeks, you've seen unemployment numbers spike in those areas because we are 10% of the state's workforce, really across the board. So, like that would be something I think, as like you said, McConnell's being. And I'll do my part here with the National Restaurant Association and my colleagues, but getting something done is everything. And so leading with that, but then also I know Matt Storch is on our call here, but he asked a really good question that I don't know if it's in this bill or if it can be added to it. But a big question that's come up is the tax deductibility of the first round of PPP. Because we're getting to the end of the year, a lot of accountants are talking to these guys, and it's not right now a tax deductible of them getting this money. That's just another blow. And there's talk about trying to fix that in the current PPP, and then if we do a new one, is that something that you've heard or what you guys are talking about of trying to get something done by that December 10th, December 11th? Is that on the table as well?
Absolutely. I'm a leading supporter of specific legislation that would correct that inequity. The IRS never told you guys about its supposed policy on the tax treatment of PPP and sprung it on you without real notice when you took the loans and then converted them into grants. And we have a specific measure, it's bipartisan, that would correct that inequity, and I hope it'll be part of this bill.
No, that was obviously one of the big questions we had this morning. The other piece, so I've seen different parts of this $908 billion, and I know you've seen it probably much more in detail. So I think those are some of the big pieces to this. Is our industry isn't just specific to restaurants. It's caterers, it's private events, it's the live event industry as well. I know there's some folks on here. I see Brandon in the screen and others. Like, we need to make sure, and you know this better than anybody because of weddings and how that affected your own family, that we need to make sure that, as I see Doug from Amber Room on the screen, out there in Danbury, like that we're helping all aspects of our industry. When we talk about saving Connecticut restaurants in our own statewide campaign, we're talking about an industry that everyone's a part of this. So I know as the details, hopefully there's some talk today and tomorrow about coming together and finding a solution. but then I still think there's work ahead in the next, 6 or 7 days of what actually gets passed and making sure that we're not leaving parts of our sector out of this opportunity for getting them through this pandemic. And that would be something I just want to make sure you understand when I use the word restaurants. It's an industry that has been so heavily affected, and Jonathan Jennings is on.
So I've talked to Jonathan repeatedly, and he has been very insightful and compelling in his observations. In fact, I've sat down with many in the events industry in all parts of the state. Great roundtable in Bridgeport. I am so moved by the real cliff that these folks face. As I've said to you, Scott, they have to plan 6 months, 8 months, 12 months out, which I know from my own experience because one of my sons was married in September, and we had to reduce the scope of the wedding from a couple of hundred people down to 50 people, and then eventually it was around 13 people. And we had to, and it broke my heart, cancel, the caterers, the band, just the scope of this industry in terms of the numbers of employees and workers that it touches. I know very dramatically, and as I mentioned, I'm glad to see that Jonathan is on the call, and others who are involved in the events industry. And frankly, it's also, our venues for entertainment, the theaters that are also linked to the restaurants, because people will go to your restaurants when they go to see a show and vice versa. So this economy is very interconnected. And of course, it affects our tourism industry as well, which is a major income driver in Connecticut. So I have come to appreciate, Scott, these points that you're making in a very visceral gut sense. And that's the reason why I'm so passionate about trying to do something and doing it now. We can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Senator, you're exactly right. I think the other piece to this, I guess a question that I'm hearing, there's the Restaurants Act, there's a Restore Act, but if something comes out that it's more of a PPP, and we've talked about this directly, is which I think there's some worry I have on the PPP for, especially on the events world, because they don't have the employees like a restaurant. So how we help them in this, but also making sure that we're helping. There's got to be a hardship. There's got to be a cliff side of who's eligible for this, because we saw that in that first round of these $5-7 million PPP programs that went to businesses in our own state that, in my opinion, are not, the ones that are on this call that have taken it on the chin over these last 8 months. And if it is $288 billion, whatever is that pool of money, everybody that's on this call, all of our industry has to be first in line or near the top of the line as like tourism, hospitality, how that's built, because that does worry me. We saw that in Connecticut in the $50 million program. We saw 18,000 out of the 10,000 businesses in 2 days apply. And they only had a 20% threshold and I said that to Commissioner Lehman. I said, I'd rather start at 80% and let's take care of them first, and then let's go to 60, and let's help the ones that are on the verge of collapse, of shutting their doors. Let's make sure they get money first. And I think that would be my question in how this PPP program is built again, if it's a second round, that we don't, we make sure that we're helping the most impacted industries first. And then, obviously if there's money left over, which I don't think there will be, but that is just a concern. I don't know if you guys have talked about that, because I think PPP has been the direction. We know that's the eligibility, how to get the money, go through the banks. We've all done it before, which might get them money faster. And it also has that paycheck point to this to make sure that employees are paid through this program. I would hope that it's the 60-40 that we passed in the Flexibility Act, which you led and charged that, which is great. I would hope that it's 24 weeks so we get to the spring how to use that money. But the other thing that never got updated, Senator, as well, is PPP expenses, PPE expenses in the PPP were still not allowed to be used. So I want to make sure that any expenses these restaurants are using on plexi, sanitation, masks, all that, like they should be able to write that off with that money. So that would be something. Those are kind of 2 points to the PPP that I know you've talked about publicly, but making sure that we continue to talk through that as we get this thing passed. That we are near the front of the line, and there's also some other maybe minor changes to how the money can be used as well.
These are all really important points. I touched on a couple of them at the very outset, but let me just run through them again. We're trying to learn from our mistakes. I'll be very blunt. We're trying to do better than the initial PPP program. As you know, the initial PPP program involved money going to a lot of businesses that were doing just fine. Small businesses that may not have needed that money, and businesses that had readier access to the banks because they borrowed before. A lot of your businesses may not have even received a PPP loan that could be converted into a grant. So we're trying to learn from those mistakes. They were mistakes motivated by good intentions. We wanted to get the money out as quickly as possible and as robustly as possible to as many small businesses as possible. But this next round would require eligibility for the second PPP loans to demonstrate at least a 25% reduction in gross revenues but compared to past years. And the restaurant industry, I think, generally everybody on this call would have no trouble demonstrating it. And it would include, our hope is, set asides for PPP borrowers who did not receive a first-time loan or have 10 or fewer employees and continue to experience that kind of drop in revenue. It would retain the 60-40 allocation for payroll and non-payroll. It would provide for choices of forgiveness between 8 and 24 weeks, so flexibility in terms of how the loan is either used or paid back. And it would also provide for aid to the live revenues and live venues and theaters in much the same way. So I think it meets many of the points that you've made, but most importantly, I want to hear from you these kinds of points over the next several days and try to really respond and address the points that you're making, just as I have tried to do up to now.
Yeah, Senator, you're exactly right. I just want to make sure as we go, we got to get something done. First and foremost, like it's not going to, I'm sure there's going to be, like you talked about, it wasn't perfect the first time. It wasn't even probably perfect the fixed in the second time they added more money to it. I don't know if we have time to make this one perfect right now, but I think, because of where we are and, this probably better than a lot of your senators that are colleagues, like we're in the Northeast. Like we are not like Florida and Texas. As I talk to my counterparts that can do outdoor dining 12 months out of the year, like when you're at a 50% capacity, when you're at a threat of possibly, there's a talk every day about more rollbacks. You saw what happened in Rhode Island down to 33%, Delaware down to 30. Every day is a fear. Consumer confidence is down, but I just think that, we have to get something done no matter what. And that, like we have to get something done. I'm happy. I'll be here whenever you need me to help, continue to work with National. So, too, National is going to launch, which is going to be Stark. They've done a survey throughout the country. We've done it before. They're going to start sending out stuff by the end of the week and early next week for all of our members. You're going to probably see a lot of emails. Mike will probably say to your inbox but showing how hard our industry has been hit. But I will work with them every day as we get to that point of passage to make sure that, I know there's been different language. I've seen, it's got to be under $1.5 million of a business. That worries me, just so you know, in our industry. Just to be honest, like most average restaurants, especially full service restaurants, are well over 2 or 3 million in gross revenues. Net profits 46%. So it's not, people are like, oh, you generate a lot of revenue. You're not bringing a lot home. So I want to make sure that the restaurant industry is not every single restaurant, whether it's Max Downtown, as you know, or a small little restaurant here in Simsbury, should all be eligible. So those things do worry me as we make sure we try to get as many little things fixed. We can learn from our first 2 passes with this, but the only biggest message today is something has to get done. And if Congress, and you can tell it to all your colleagues, if you guys leave for Christmas without a package on the table, the 600 number in Connecticut, I promise you, will be 1,500 to close to 2,000. And that is, and I'm not trying to hide behind it. I'm not sharing misinformation, as I shared with Commissioner Lehman yesterday. I had a talk with about 7 restaurateurs in Hartford yesterday about what happened with Trumbull Kitchen, and they're all like reading the tea leaves and probably looking to make a very similar decision in the next week. That's the reality that people are staying open right now for their staff. They're not staying open beyond that. They're staying open because they're like, I have to try to pay. I can't put them back on unemployment again leading into the holidays. They've got families. This is so hard. So no matter what happens, we have to get something done. I know that's the purpose of today's call. But I just and you've been that leader and champion, but anything you need from me, and I know you got to get down to vote as well, but this team here of all these restaurateurs, anything that you guys need down there to help us tell that story and make sure these guys get something done, men and women down there, because the economic impact long term, what that's going to mean for employees, what that's going to mean for the ancillary businesses, what that's going to mean for this entire state. It is, and I'm not going to hide behind the fact that this is the hardest time these men and women have ever faced, and they need your help. And you know that, but I can't have McConnell or someone else blaming each other like, oh, well, we're just going to send them home, or Pelosi going like that. That can't be a response that we can have in the next 2 weeks down there in DC.
I completely and totally agree. There's just no way that Congress should leave town without doing a relief package. We cannot, in good conscience, go back home for these holidays without doing another pandemic relief package for the sake of restaurants, but also the rest of our economy and the millions of people who rightly dread this insidious disease. We need to do strong measures that address the pandemic and the kind of economic hardship that you have been describing on this call. But let me just say, the more you can do in contacting your colleagues in states like Kentucky, the better. You and I have talked, and I've talked to many on this call, about the need to mobilize the industries that are most directly affected. And number 2, I will speak to the governor's team, try to reach the governor himself, and emphasize what you have said to me on this call and my agreement with it. And third, let me give everyone my cell phone. I've done this before on these calls. I'm going to do it again. 202-641-0532. 202-641-0532. I wouldn't be giving you that number if I didn't want to hear from you. And folks like Jonathan Jennings, I see him on this call. Thank you for all of your contacts to me. Hope your family's fine. My best to Matthew. I have really valued the comments that you've made to me directly, whether by text or by phone. They have really enlightened the positions I've taken down here, and they've emboldened me in this fight. So, Scott, your comments are really valuable on this call, but I also want to keep in touch with everybody who's on this call and others. 202-641-0532. And I think I might have time for just a couple more questions if you have any, Scott or anyone else on the call.
Well, listen, Senator, the last other piece, as I see all these faces on here and know these businesses like you do to heart and what they're going through, I think the other message down in DC is, they need to come together. The divisiveness, is causing like a bill that didn't pass months ago that should have passed. And, we've been waiting 5 months. Like, anything you can do with even your Republican colleagues, like, as you know, I've got 51 other colleagues across the country that I talk to on a daily basis. And, anybody that's a holdup, I mean, literally, like, I've heard like, oh, well, Rubio is kind of like, I'm happy to call Carol Dover down in Florida and say, hey, and I'm going to call Kentucky right after this call, because this isn't about what side of their political view is on right now. This is about survival of businesses that matter, and that's the biggest kind of messaging today. That, like, these people that are on this call, I've said, I sit in the middle of this. It's not about right or left, Republican, Democrat. Like, everyone needs to come together, because the impact it's going to have on Connecticut, it's going to have the same impact on Kentucky. It's going to have the same impact on Florida as it would in Michigan. That's where I think that both the House and the Senate down in DC, and even the president for that matter, need to understand that, yes, and I heard the governor say 93% of our businesses are back running. People can telecommute. Our industry doesn't work that way. Our industry, you have to have your staffs come in. You have to have guests come to your restaurant, either to pick up food or hopefully sit down and dine. It doesn't work any other way than that. And unfortunately, we've been in a pandemic that has not allowed us to even get anywhere back to normal again. But I lean on you too, Senator, and Mike and your entire team of what else we need to do from our side. I mean, I can quickly mobilize and get 120 people on a call, no problem. But whatever is asked that you guys think will help move the needle when you see bumps in the road over the next few days, because I know that's what's going to happen. I know certain people are going to say, well, I want to pass this, although I'm not going to do it. We can't have people put their head in the sand and not help us. And if there's a state you're like, Scott, Rubio, I'm hearing this, or I heard McConnell, like, I don't, at the end of the day, I don't care anymore. Like, we need to get this done, because I can't see these businesses not make it. So you keep me posted. Obviously, I appreciate you sharing your cell phone with everybody here, just so you guys all know. Like, we text, Senator and I text a lot. He's extremely responsive to that. But your leadership down there matters, Senator. I know it's there, but for us, your voice matters to these people that are listening to you on this call, and getting cooler heads to prevail down in DC in the next 10 days is in less than that. We're December 3rd. We're 7 days from you guys being able to potentially pass. That you have to pass a bill down there for that, and that's where the talk is, of putting that bill together. Anything that we can do. Well,
let me just end on this note. I appreciate everybody being on this call. If you and I can talk, Scott, over the next few days, maybe we'll do another call next week, giving everybody an opportunity to maybe ask some more questions, given what we may know in the meantime. But here is what I regard as the hopeful sign. Senator Murphy and I are united in this cause. Our delegation on the House side is united with us. And I think there are real glimmers of hope, bipartisan hope. There should be nothing, Republican or Democrat, about this issue. And in fact, we've done bipartisan measures, 3 or 4 of them. The CARES Act, for example, was overwhelmingly approved by a bipartisan majority. And so were the first 2 measures that address the pandemic, health and economic crisis. So nothing I've said here should be interpreted as a partisan pitch or partisan criticism, because there's goodwill on both sides here. And I know we have Republicans as well as Democrats on this call. In fact, I saw very specifically some of my Republican friends who were on the call. So we really do need to come together, as you have said so well, Scott, and I've heard from others. And you've given me some really important ammunition to take with me in continuing this fight. And the case that you've made has been very compelling. So I really want to thank everybody who's been on this call. And again, 202-641-0532. I hope to talk to a number of you over the coming days. I'm going to be back this weekend, as I am every weekend, and I hope to visit with some of you in restaurants Friday or possibly Monday, and then I'm going to be back the next week. And we have to stay in Washington, D.C. as long as it takes to do another relief package. We're in total agreement. I am in total agreement with you on that point.
Senator, I know you have to run. Two quick things, and you've been a champion of the first one, but you can even mention this to the governor when you do talk to him. Besides state grant relief through the CARES Fund, I hope that he helps us in that. But consumer confidence, as you know, and we've talked about this for 8 months, is absolutely everything in our industry. And messaging about, safety in our industry, or leaders in safety and sanitation, there has yet to be a report out there, national or local, that has tied spread in our restaurants. And I think that our fear is even staying open at 2.1 right now. But what you can continue to do to help us with the governor and your own messaging, you being at restaurants and supporting them, matters. And doing that publicly. It does, because people are making decisions like, oh, the senator's out to eat, and look, it's spaced out, look like that. And I said that to Commissioner Lehman. He's like, oh, I ate out 3 times last weekend. I'm like, great. Why didn't you put it up? Send me a photo. Did you say hi to the owner? Like, that matters. To public are making decisions based on what they hear in the news and what the elected officials are saying. So I just continue to help that you help champion that for us, because it's the consumer confidence. It doesn't matter whether we go back to phase 1 in some reality right now. If we can't get consumer confidence back up about eating inside of a restaurant or takeout or to go or supporting our restaurants, because they are safe, and I'll put them up against any business. And someone sent me a picture yesterday. I won't call out the dealership, but there was like a dealership where 12 employees inside of a car dealership didn't have a mask on at all. And it's things like that frustrate these people on this call that are doing everything that's asked of them. And then they turn around and see the media saying that we're a risk business, which I just don't think. So that would be the one thing. The other one is, I know Brandon brought up a really good point about PUA and unemployment, and making sure this PPP doesn't always work for everyone in our industry. If you're a small independent, you take a draw, the PPP doesn't fully work. So I think as we talk through this, are there other things that can be done, or extending the PUA, other things to make sure that everyone has a chance to get through the end of this pandemic, these businesses. So Brandon, it's a great point. I know the senator knows it, but we need to make sure, like, as we talk every day here, Senator, down in DC, we have to make sure that everybody in our industry has a chance to survive, and whatever that means. And I know you know that, but I saw a couple of questions on the side. I know Allie tied it to as well, and some of the other folks, like, the PPP doesn't work for everybody. So are there things, as we look to put that whole bill together, maybe extending PUA, obviously the unemployment help for our employees matters, what that looks like, of making sure that we help everybody here get through this. So it's survival, Senator.
And this measure it would extend PUA.
Okay.
I fully understand the points that you're making. I think they are very, very well taken.
Well, I'm just kind of go through the questions on the right. I didn't think we are going to have 120 people. I would have probably put some faces and talking heads so everyone didn't have to hear me ask you all these questions. But, I apologize.
Let's do it again next week, Scott.
Senator Formica, I did want to just acknowledge you, sir, as you know, being our new ranking member of the state Senate, deputy ranking member of the state Senate, owning Flanders Fish Market. His daughter's actually on our board, Olivia. But Senator, I appreciate you being on today. I just want to give you a second if you wanted to say anything. I know you talked to Senator Blumenthal a lot, but I just want to acknowledge you this morning and see if there's anything I might have missed.
No, good morning. Thank you. You've been very thorough. Thank you, Senator, once again for, all that you're doing down there for us. I think the comprehensive package extends beyond restaurants. Landlords need need
Yep.
help, that trickles down to us. The commercial office space in places like Hartford that are vacant and unable to support the businesses on Main Street, that's only going to get worse. But no, I'm on board, Scott, with you, everything you're doing. I know the senator's got to go, but perhaps next week we can get together before the call and come up with a few ideas that we can share. But it's a very comprehensive problem, and confidence remains the way out. And the best economic development tool I think we have comes out of places like the great people in research at Pfizer, and we need to get that vaccine on the street as soon as we can do it. So part of the relief package has to help with that. So thank you so much for the kindness, Scott.
Thank you, Senator. I was going to call you out, Paul. I didn't know whether I should or not, but Senator Formica has really been a leader. I've been in his restaurant. I've enjoyed the food, but also the company. I hope you'll say hi to Olivia for me. It's a great place, and Paul does great work in Hartford, and it sort of brings home the point that I was making earlier. We are together, Republicans, Democrats, we are together on this effort, and I apologize that I'm going to have to run now, but we will do it again next week, and I don't care whether it's 3 people or 300 people. I want to be there to continue this conversation. Thank you very much, Scott, and thank you to everybody who's on this call.
Thank you,
Yes, Senator. Thank you again, Mike. Thank you to the entire team for putting this together, and for everybody kind of listening in. Just stay tuned for other stuff. The last thing I'm going to bring up, and the senator knows this, Save CT Restaurants, hashtag Save CT Restaurants is our state platform right now. We have a letter to the governor, as Senator Formica knows, talking about the CARES Act funding and a grant program for our industry as a whole. But telling your story matters. Using your platforms to talk about, the personal story that your restaurant, your private event venue, Brandon, what you do. We need to tell that story. Understand restaurants is an overarching name. It's everything. It's about our industry and how it's affected. So I hope you guys take the time to do that. You can text Save CT Restaurants to 52886 right now, and you can it'll go right to, I'm sure Senator Formica's already received some of them. It'll go right to your state senator, your rep, and it'll go right to the governor's office that they need to know. We need help. Not only we need help from Senator Blumenthal down in D.C., but we need help from our governor as well. So, Mike, thank you so much for the time this morning. I don't know if I missed anything else. We will definitely do this again. But I hope you guys know that I need you all in this fight, and I appreciate your time as always.
Great. Thank you so much, Scott. Really appreciate it. Another great conversation.
Thank you, Scott.
With you and all your members here. I did notice that we had some press outlets on the call as well. Obviously, Senator Blumenthal had to leave and go vote on the floor. But if any press has any questions for Scott, or if anybody of the members want to provide any remarks or answer any questions for press, we'll keep this line open for a little bit. Well, it's crickets over here, so...
Can you just...
I'm sorry?
Yes, can you please resend the contact information so that we can all post it on our websites and on our social media? All the outreach info that you want, including hashtags? Yeah, so the easiest way to do that, everybody, is you can go right to our website, ctrestaurant.org. Everything is on that page of Save CT Restaurants. You can go through it. It has the media kit. It has everything to make it easy for you guys to tell your story. So if you need anything from me, I'll put it out, put my email out here as well, and to make sure my team gets back to you. It's not about members. It's every restaurant needs to survive right now, every business in our industry. So whatever you guys need, I'm here. So.
Excuse me, Scott, this is Sue Haig with the Associated Press. Can I ask a question, please?
Sure, go ahead, Sue.
Quick question. Where do things stand with the Connecticut CARES Act money? I know you guys I've been out of office for a little bit, but I wondered, is there any chance of getting larger grants? I know that's something that you wanted.
So it's a great question. I actually have a follow-up with Commissioner Lehman this afternoon. We talk every single day about it. I have not, I want to be optimistic and confident. You know that timeline is ticking. It's December 31st that they have to spend the money or allocate the money. So we're now down to about 28 days. I've pitched them, as you've seen, some of the different states out there. Rhode Island, even last week, announced an additional $50 million targeted to the restaurant and hospitality industry, and another $50 million to helping unemployment benefits. Washington D.C. did $35 million. Maryland did $50 million. New Jersey 35, and more states every day seem to understand the impact that our industry is being hit with. And the $5,000 grants, while they help the smallest of the small, my ask is let's help the hardest hit. And looking at, I even said like a $50 million program specifically targeted to hospitality. You could look to try to give $20,000 or $30,000 grants to 2,000 businesses. As much as I want every restaurant to survive and get this money, I'm also worried about the ones, I give examples that were like Trumbull Kitchen that were down 78% year over year, that they are making a tough decision to close their doors. There's the businesses like that, or Jonathan Jennings and his World with Connecticut Wedding Group that has really lost everything this year and making sure they can get to this next federal stimulus. Because as Mike knows, I want to be confident that something's going to happen in the next 8 days in DC. But these other states haven't waited for providing this money to the both need to help. Both need to happen, I feel, for our industry to make it in the level that we need it to. And I want to be a leader in Connecticut, helping more restaurants and maybe some other states. So
our state just hasn't done enough. Our state hasn't done the same things that we're supposed to be mirroring. New York and Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Those programs and stuff are far. They're so much more than what they're offering us. A $5,000 grant and only showing 20% loss. Any business in the state of Connecticut can probably show a 20% loss right now. It's for the bottleneck of the applications that have come through that CT CARES Act funding, and not to mention that it's also included in 501c3, that like there are separate states that are doing separate funding for nonprofits that are also going through hardship and doing things like that. Our state has just allocated this little lump sum here and lump sum there, and that's it. And $5,000, frankly, just it isn't enough. It's not enough. And it like the entry requirements to be eligible to get it aren't strict enough, because 20% is nothing. It's super.
no, Brandon, I appreciate that too. And to follow up, really specific to that, it is about helping. My whole messaging since the beginning of this, when we saw New Hampshire launch their program about 7 months ago, we've been pushing to use CARES Act funding. We need to help the hardest hit industries. I put our industry up against any other industry to say it's not like I'm making up a grant program that other states, to Brandon's point, haven't already put out and put forth and used their dollars for. And if it's not CARES Act funding, I know the governor has even mentioned rainy day, and whatever that it has to be. Even in 2.1 right now, this money is needed. It's like, oh well, if we shut us fully down, we are in a sense, as I see these messages down the side, we are in this right now. Like the amount of revenue lost last week is stark. So I've seen the numbers. Open table numbers of reservations aren't getting any better. It's a scary reality of where our industry is right now.
How big should the grants be?
I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I've kind of looked at some of the states and said, about 50, in my opinion, $50 million, and looking at $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 grants. I look at them as bridge grants. They called them bridge loans early on. I'm looking at December, January, February, how you can spend that money until if a federal stimulus is going to take time to pass, if it doesn't happen December, you're looking at February. That gives 2 months without any help, safety net. So that's what really trying to be bridge grants that get these restaurants to that point. Then they have federal stimulus. Then we have spring. Then we hopefully have a vaccine, and we have recovery. That's how I'm looking at why, if the state can step up and the federal government at some point can step up and help together, this industry, will not have those numbers that are projected. I'm being told that as high as 2,000, 2,300, 2,400, food establishments will be lost in our state through the pandemic if we don't help.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for everyone's help.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I have a microphone and a video camera. I just want to say thank you, Scott, for putting this together. I know it's been kind of it's taken a lot of emotional weight on everyone, and it takes a lot of your time as well. So I for one, the people that are intertwined with the restaurant industry, but also in the events and live entertainment industry as well, that we're all being affected by this. So the little, I know your main focus is your main focus, but anytime you're able to kind of pivot a little bit and include other industries, in your chats and in your discussions as well, it's greatly appreciated.
Well, and that goes back to, Brandon, the Save CT restaurants, as I shared with, we have, and Mike, not to take over your call, but, we have an alliance of private events, and the caterers are and even your business, Brandon, with the DJ and everything you've already done for our association, but what it means to you to have restaurants back open. We're all in this together. I think we've learned that, and I think the louder our voice can be, and that's really where that Save CT restaurant campaign is. I mean, so you guys know, we have 960 people in less than 48 hours that have taken their 2 minutes of their time to either text the number or use the link. And you can write a personal message on there. You don't have, I helped write it for you, but you can write your story, and it'll go, and you're going to hear back, hopefully, from your state rep and your state senator, hopefully even the governor's office at some point. But, that's another form of advocacy that we need right now, is we're only as strong as our entire, ancillary businesses, not just the restaurant, everybody that's affected. And I agree with you, Brandon. Like, if one fails, we all fail. And if we can't see the other side of this pandemic, I just fear for everybody's affected. I will give a quick shout out to CT Bites and Eat In Connecticut and Go Nation as 3 companies that are working pro bono with us just to help us get our messaging out there. They know that without you guys surviving, they don't survive either. So Steph, Jeanette, and Kristen and Chaz have been phenomenal. But listen, this is going to take everybody. You guys have other ideas I don't know that we can do. I'm here. I'm all ears. And I know we're kind of asking media. There's still, I think, a couple other media folks still on the call. I'm happy to take more questions. I feel like this is like a governor press conference at 4:00, but I'm happy to take any questions you guys have. I think maybe we've answered everything, Mike. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to take that extended pause and silence as questions have been answered. So,
Hey, Scott, this is Paul. I just put my cell up on the chat if anybody needs it or wants to get with me as we begin the process of opening the session.
Thank you, Paul. Senator, I really appreciate your time today. And to the media, so you guys know, like, I see some of the faces that join, but I see, with NBC, News 12, News 8, as I tell them every time I do an interview, your stories matter. You keeping us in a positive limelight and telling the positive stories of the good actors, which is what we need to continue to focus on. The vast majority of this industry that's doing everything right. We appreciate, all the calls. I don't mind the late night Zooms or going out to see you guys. We're going to need you guys through this fight as well. So thank you guys for being on this call, but also all that your team continues to do to help us.
On that note, Scott, I think I'm going to end things. Thank you so much. We'll definitely be in touch and try to get another one of these sooner than later. Hopefully some good news.
Sounds good, Mike. Thank you, everybody, for your time. And, if you guys need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out.